Ladies and gentlemen, I know what you're thinking. What on earth is going on? Why are we starting the video halfway through the disassembly? Fear not. I shall tell you, this is the automatic rotor from a lovely Rolex Submariner owned by an even lovelier man called Julian. Julian reported there were issues with the watch, not winding automatically, and looking at the signs of corrosion, it is not surprising. Can this watch be saved? Of course it can. Let's go. We shall proceed by dismantling the automatic works, as ever keeping in mind the second rule of watchmaking. Never assume that what you find is correct. While we know these three screws are the same part number, we shall double-check they are identical, in case there has been previous watchmaker shenanigans. The flaky brown residue is indicative that a certain chemical reaction has happened within this watch. The iron in the steel plus oxygen in the air has reacted with water to create a hydrated version of iron-3 oxide, sometimes also known as rust. And here is the source of the rust, the reversal wheels, both of them. While we expect our watches to contain steel and air, the villain of the story is water. How did it get into this watch? And how did it get to the inside of the reversal wheels without causing damage anywhere else? We have a theory that we shall elucidate shortly. But first, let's get everything cleaned and polished and then decide whether these parts need to be replaced. This is going to take some hard manual labor. Don't worry, we shall go through a little lie down with the damp flannel on our forehead when we are finished. Brushes, pegwood, pithwood, isopropyl alcohol, and pin polishing sticks first, then a run through the cleaning machine. Everything is looking lovely now, so we can put the automatic works together and explain the reverser wheel's rust mystery. First parts in are the rotor spring clip and its little retaining plate. Remember these two important points. Use the right size screwdriver, and that a gentleman always maintains clean fingernails. Now the automatic rotor winding pinion and a little lubrication. Prepare the jewels for the incoming parts. If one prefers, the oil can be put on the pivots first. But today we're doing the jewels. Rolex mandates that the reverser wheels are treated in epilam, an oil-phobic substance in a fast evaporating solvent. That fast evaporation makes these parts very cold, leading to condensation of a small amount of water on them. If a watchmaker in a hurry doesn't confirm their parts are free of solvent and condensation before refitting them, well, we saw what happened. It is an absolute pleasure to see how well these parts have recovered from the rust boondoggle. It really was a tiny amount, but these parts are very sensitive to the slightest increase in friction. With the reverser wheels in place, we shall return the ratchet driving wheel. The cover plate, always try to drop it so it plonks into position perfectly. Here we go, 3, 2, 1, plonk. Of course, it never, ever happens, maybe one day. And it's the first appearance for Watchmaker's special stick. And here we have it, the automatic works back together and ready for some top-notch winding. The watch isn't running too badly, but the amplitude is a little low and there's some positional variance. Also, the bezel doesn't turn at all. Let's get stuck in and see what we shall see. With the automatic works already removed, we can let down the power, and while we are here, let's get the balance wheel to a place of safety too. On many watches, removing the balance wheel now would be a struggle, but the design of the balance wheel bridge in combination with Rolex's superlative manufacturing tolerances allows the assembly to easily lift up. Generally speaking, working on Rolex watches is a joy. They're simple, robust, and very well made. Some other watch brands with looser tolerances have bridges that need to be prized away. But with these quality watches, parts lift out smoothly and go back together without a fuss. Exactly how Hans Wilsdorf, blessed be his bezel, intended. Take care with the hand levers, don't mark the dial, and keep clear of the hour markers. And now the date wheel, not gripping it with the tweezers, putting it well past the tweezer tips, so just the inner and outer rim of the date wheel is in contact. Let's look at the bezel. Now, that is lovely to see. Some people keep their watches locked away, but this watch has clearly been worn every day in all conditions for many years. Hans Wilsdorf, may his rotor spin eternally, would have been happy to see this. Just remembered we owe an ultrasonic cleaner. No need to break a sweat with more hard manual labor. And through the magic of editing, it's done. While we disassemble the keyless and motion work, shall we have a little chat about one of the murkier corners of Rolex history? From the very start, Hans Wilsdorf, may his loom ever glow, was a master of the watchmaking business. He understood that a well-made watch was only part of the battle. Following the known advertising saying, "Don't sell the sausage, sell the sizzle," he set about creating as much sizzle as he could. He wanted people to know he sold the best watches, and to prove that he marked the cases with the number of world records his watches had won. No need to get lost in the weeds of what these records are for. A world record is a world record. Watches from 1923 had acclaimed 7 world records. 3 years later, it was an astounding 16 world records. What could be better than that? 20 world records, of course, and by 1941, Rolex was marking its watches with an almost unbelievable 34 world records. Wilsdorf made his gaskets stay supple, started to use big events to demonstrate the utility of his watches. Famously, the first woman to swim the English Channel, Mercedes Gleitz, did so wearing a Rolex. And we all know that Rolex didn't let a little thing like their watch not being worn on the first ascent of Everest to get in the way of a bit of brand mythology with the explorer. But despite the possible moments of facts being stretched until they squeaked, the watches mentioned here all definitely existed. They were made for and sold by Rolex and were actual, indisputable Rolex watches. And with that portentous foreshadowing, we come to the case of the Rolex Space Dweller. The story is that when John Glenn, the first American astronaut to orbit Earth, visited Japan in 1963, he was met with immense admiration. Capitalizing on this enthusiasm, Rolex released a limited edition of its Explorer model, rebranded as the Space Dweller, exclusively for the Japanese market. Why Rolex decided a watch aimed at fans of the space race would only be sold in Japan is not clear. We shall come back to this fact later. The story continues. Despite the initial excitement, the Space Dweller did not achieve commercial success. Rolex had produced it in extremely limited quantities as a market test, and when it failed to resonate with consumers, the model was quietly discontinued. Estimates suggest that only a handful were ever made, making it one of the rarest Rolex watches today. There are some other facts we should look at. The Space Dweller name was registered by Rolex in 1967 and for use in the United States in 1968. But that name registration seems to be the only documentary proof that the watch ever existed. Why did Rolex not include the watch in any catalogue? Why is there no evidence of a marketing campaign? Also, in the book Rolex Scene 1913 to 1997, written by Shigeharu Aritake, one of the most significant Japanese vintage Rolex dealers and collectors, he makes no mention of the Space Dweller. It's almost as if the watch never actually existed. And please excuse us a moment's cynicism in a life otherwise lived in wide-eyed joy, but doesn't the exclusive to Japan story have the same energy as, I do have a girlfriend actually, you wouldn't know her, she goes to another school. But if the watch never existed, how would it be possible for some examples to have been sold at auction for vast sums of money? This is getting very confusing. Let's take a step back and look at what the Space Dweller was. The examples sold are a Rolex Explorer with the words Space Dweller on the dial. There are apparently 13 known to exist. A few of these have been shown to be watches put together from loose dials sold at auction in 2008, dials that later turned up on complete watches with unlikely backstories, so those ones aren't real. And if Rolex had a batch of dials manufactured with the Space Dweller branding and added these to some Explorer watches for market testing in Japan, we'd expect the case serial numbers to be close together, if not sequential. But the serial numbers of the known examples are all over the place, dating from 1961 to 1968. This is all looking somewhat odd. Why did Rolex make 13 watches spread over an 8-year period to sell exclusively in one country while keeping its existence completely secret? Who knows why Rolex didn't talk about these watches, but once they had been sold and were on people's wrists, they must have been talked about. They must have turned up occasionally at dealers and in auction catalogues. Well, no, they did not. For 40 years they remained completely unknown. Then one suddenly popped into existence at an auction in 2002. What an amazing find! Unknown for over 40 years, and then one turns up, sells for a lot of money, and guess what? Another pops up. Then another, and another, and another. We've just touched the surface of the Space Dweller story here. Jose Pereztroika has written a marvellous analysis of the dodgy history of the Rolex Space Dweller. There's a link in the description. It's a masterclass in horological detective work and a warning for those of us with over £100,000 to spend on an old watch. For those not blessed with the privilege of using British pounds, £100,000 is very nearly 125 million Angolan kwanzas. And that is a lot of kwanzas in anybody's language. That is enough yap about that. Let's see how we're doing with the disassembly. We found a couple of examples of overly exuberant lubrication, but otherwise the movement is in good condition. The pallet fork was stuck in its jewel by some sort of contamination, which may explain the slightly low amplitude observed before we started the service. Please do accept our humblest apologies. Nobody should have to see such carelessness on their screens. In a moment of thoughtlessness, we didn't support the shock spring while releasing it. The cat jewel was placed in a little pot for cleaning later. And its twin on the main plate will follow into the same pot. The balance wheel jewels are removed at this time too. Back over to continue the disassembly of the train of wheel bridges. That's unusual. The second wheel jewel has no oil on it at all. The watchmaker must have been having an off day. Always thrilled to spot a bit of dirt, grot, or what not on the pinion leaves. We can easily improve the situation, giving our life purpose and meaning. This center wheel holds the second hand on its long pivot. The escape wheel is looking in good condition. The little pinion under this little bridge is driven by the mainspring barrel, holds the minute hand, and also drives the hour hand. The crown wheel and the hack both live under this bridge, the last to be removed during the dismantlement. A little bit grubby, but no more so or less so than expected. The pre-clean, removing congealed lubrication dirt and other extraneous materials is the most important part of the cleaning process. The cleaning machine just removes the residue left behind. While the rest of the parts are getting whizzed around, let's have a go at the cat jewels. Probably the most satisfying job in watchmaking. Nothing beats a correctly lubricated, balanced jewel. We'll rehouse the lower balance jewel too, and then the cap jewel for the escape wheel. Let's get the balance wheel so it's safe placed. $2 of 9010 oil for the escape wheel lower cap jewel. And of course, the upper cap jewel for the escape wheel too. That's most of the preparation for reassembly done. One more thing, the mainspring barrel. Dots of grease to regulate the slipping of the mainspring as it's constantly wound by the automatic works. We'll just show 2 of the 6 portions of grease being applied. Great care must be taken here. My grandfather was hit by an escaping mainspring. All we found left of him was a perfect spiral dent in the ceiling and a faint smell of Brill cream. We live to watch make another day. Let's get the barrel arbor greased and in. Remember, always check there's a little bit of play in the barrel arbor before moving on. Unsurprisingly, the assembly process is pretty much the reverse of the disassembly process, so it's last part out, first part in, with the minute hand pinion. While we remember, let's get the hack back in. The Rolex name for this part is the balance wheel stop spring or something like that. It's the thing that stops the watch running when you go into hand setting mode. The winding bridge needs to be reassembled. We're pretty sure this is the correct screw. It looks about right. It's in here somewhere. We do really enjoy working on Rolexes, or is the plural Rolexi? Whatever it is, we enjoy working on them. So solid and robust, made to fine tolerances that help with assembly. And because Rolex movement designs evolved slowly, there aren't egregious flaws that you find in other movements from the period. Escape wheel next. We love the fact that a clockmaker from 500 years ago could see this wheel and he'd know exactly what it was and how it works. And now the second wheel, the little center pinion we put in first, drives the hour and minute hands. The second wheel drives all the other moving parts in the watch, including the balance wheel and the ticking second hand. Train of wheels, bridge next. We'll work down the train of wheels, making sure each pivot is in. Escape wheel last. Hold the bridge with the watchmaker's special stick while the first screw secures the situation. We shall install the barrel bridge, shaking a bit here. Time for a tea and crumpet break soup. A splonge of oil in capillary action will take it to exactly where it's needed. And more oil for the train of wheels. Again, capillary action draws the oil to where it's needed. We're looking to see small circles of lubrication on the underside of the jewels. And we follow the same procedure on the lower jewels too. Back over to the other side and we shall complete the population of the barrel bridge. The wheel on this pivot disengages from the crown wheel when the automatic works wind the crown wheel. This stops energy being wasted turning the crown wheel, winding pinion and stem. Click spring and a very little oil in preparation for the click. We'll use the watchmaker's special stick to hold the ratchet wheel while we tighten the screw. Pallet fork joins the escape wheel now. Extremely delicate pivots here. Extra care before we push the pallet fork bridge into place. Over to the keyless and motion works where blue grease will play an important role in this watch's future. Winding pinion first, more blue grease. Then the clutch, also known as the sliding pinion. Some people go hog wild and call it the sliding clutch. We don't judge. The yoke is coming soon. We'll temporarily insert the stem first. Yet more blue grease where the yoke interacts with the setting lever. But before the setting lever, we shall plonk the yoke for setting wheel into place. Guess what? More blue grease. Now the lubricated setting lever may return home. Spring for the setting lever can stop worrying about getting left behind now. The yoke spring on this watch is quite benign. It would barely reach low Earth orbit if it broke free. We read somewhere that NASA found maverick yoke springs at the bottom of lunar craters. Makes you think, doesn't it? With the setting lever spring now in, we can make a quick check of the operation. Date setting, time setting, winding, date, time, date, wind, date, time, date, wind. Quite poetic. What's next, we hear you asked? Good question, it's this. Can't remember exactly what it's called. Please excuse us while we look it up. Found it. This cover plate that goes over the winding and setting mechanism is named the mechanism cover. The Swiss are an extremely straightforward people who, when not skiing, are giving very sensible names to watch paths. We pretty much finished the keyless works. We shall proceed to the motion works. While we haven't seen the last of the blue grease, we will mainly be using a medium viscosity oil in this area. Cannon pinion, then our wheel. An intermediate wheel, and then another even more intermediate wheel. And at last the mechanism cover is dropped precisely into place, or close enough. Date mechanism next. The Rolex date change is famous for its instantaneous snap. It achieves this with a massively strong spring capable of taking out an eye at 1,000 paces. Good luck, everybody. Along with power, Rolex made the date change mechanism very low friction, top-notch design. The blue grease is back. Another quick check, including the date set mechanism and date corrector wheel. Calendar wheel may come back now. Dial now. There are no cheap Rolex parts, but dials are particularly expensive, so we'll take care to leave it as we found it. Hands are fitted at 12 o'clock to synchronize with the date change mechanism. The case was in reasonable condition, so just a clean and the lightest of polish for this one. Close to finishing now. A final showing for the blue grease, and the stem can be fitted for good this time. The automatic works can come back too. Seems like such a long time ago we fixed the issues with this part. And very last of all, the road tab. If you have a watch that needs repairing, restoring, or servicing, please do check out the Gentleman's Watch Services website via the link in the video description. Rolex movements tend to have a slightly lower amplitude than some others, but the positional variance is second to none. Look at this. That's it. We are done. Enjoy your watch, Julian. And everyone, please do have a marvelous day in all departments.